Next up, I'm really excited to welcome Kent Patenaude and Hugh Forster. Both are involved with the Luma Native Housing Society and the Luma Development Corporation, which are two very closely interrelated entities. Kent is a wonderful person, first of all, with his involvement with the Luma Native Housing Society, Kent has played an important role in advocating and making possible housing for Indigenous people in Vancouver. The Luma Native Housing Society is building how many units, you told me? How many units are you guys building now? To 1,800 units in BC, which is a significant amount. And Hugh from Terra and from the Luma Development Corporation, and when I asked him to characterize what he does, he tells me, I'm the developer. I build stuff, which is very difficult. And building it under the constraints of non-market housing, under the constraints of funding, under the constraints of everything that comes with building non-market housing and housing that is specific to the needs of Indigenous people is no easy challenge. So with that, I give the floor to Hugh and Kent, who are going to share about their projects, and specifically a project that they're going to share in New West. And please help me in welcoming Kent and Hugh.
Is this too high?
Yeah.
Is that good?
Do you need a clicker? I don't think you need a clicker. You need a clicker here that goes next.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Good morning, everyone. I want to begin by first acknowledging the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations upon whose traditional and unceded territory we're holding our event here. Kent Patenaude, I'm the president of Luma Native Housing Society, and I've been on the board for, I guess, going on 19 years now. I'm Cree, originally from Northern Alberta, but have been residing and working in the wonderful province of British Columbia for the past 30 years. So my colleague Hugh and I have been asked to come today to talk about two of our projects, which I think would be of some interest to you. But before I begin, I just want to say a few words about Luma and the group of companies. So Luma was first formed in 1981, and our original mandate was to provide safe, affordable housing to the Aboriginal community here in the Lower Mainland. Since that time, we've evolved and progressed in leaps and bounds to the point where now we do own and operate 10 entities under companies and entities under the Luma umbrella. We have all types of wraparound support services for our clients and for the Indigenous community here in Vancouver. For example, we have a medical clinic located at one of our facilities on Nanaimo and Grandview, where we have two full-time physicians, 4 nurse practitioners, as well as 2 elders and traditional healers. And so we have enjoyed great success with that clinic, and we're actually looking at opening up a second facility sometime in the next year or so. We also operate I guess would be the Indigenous equivalent of Ronald McDonald House, where we have 24 units of short-term housing where individuals that are requiring medical attention and care here in Vancouver can come out, stay at our facility, and there's room for family and supports as they go through treatments. So I won't go into all the different programs and services. I think I'll just maybe talk a little bit about the Aboriginal Land Trust, because this is something fairly new to the organization, as well as Luma Development Management. So as I mentioned, Luma has been around for 40 years or so. We've done all if not most of our, all if not most of our projects with Terra Housing, and this is an organization that has been around about the same number of times. I think it's 40 years, and so in talking to the principals at Terra, we said to them, look, we would like to see what we can do about building capacity within the Luma organization. So why don't we form a partnership, and Luma will not only start working on our own projects in conjunction with Terra, but also assist other nonprofit agencies with their housing projects around British Columbia. So Luma Development Management was formed in September of 2017, so we're just coming up to 5 years. We've enjoyed tremendous success. We're working with groups not only throughout the province of British Columbia, but we have entered into early discussions and negotiations with groups in Alberta and Saskatchewan. So we are growing quite nicely there. So I'll get maybe more into the Aboriginal, Luma development role as we talk about our projects, but I'll say a few words on the Aboriginal Land Trust. So the Aboriginal Land Trust Society was incorporated about 5 years ago as well. And the reason why we decided that we needed this alternative model to develop some of our projects was because typically Luma will enter into agreements with the province, with BC Housing, but in a lot of cases we are building our projects on leased land. And so the Aboriginal Land Trust was a way that allowed Luma to acquire and hold assets and basically give us just more control over how our projects were being developed and what types of programs and services we wanted to include in those developments. So the Land Trust was originally formed to house one particular project in New West. We had originally planned to partner with another housing agency and build an elders facility. However, when that didn't transpire, the opportunity came up to partner with the Swahili Vision Society, and we welcomed this opportunity. This was the first time that Luma was going to partner and work with a non-Indigenous group of individuals that actually there was many similarities in terms of culture and tradition, and also being a marginalized group within the Lower Mainland. So we thought we would partner and help each other's communities and help each other's societies grow and evolve as well. So I'll let Hugh explain or talk more on the New West project. I just will end my piece here for now by mentioning that the first project that was completed through the Aboriginal Land Trust model was a property in Colwood on Vancouver Island. It opened its doors in July 2021. We have 124 units of affordable housing, mainly 1 and 2 bedroom units. Due to COVID restrictions, we couldn't have an official opening of that facility last year. However, I'm pleased to say that we are doing so in a couple of weeks' time, and we're very fortunate to have a totem pole gifted to us by a renowned master carver from the Hawaiian First Nation on Vancouver Island. So we're going to have the pole raising in a couple of weeks' time, and we're really excited about that because as much as we can, we really want to incorporate Indigenous design elements in all our properties. So it's probably a good time to jump off for me for a few minutes and turn the mic over to Hugh, which will provide you with all sorts of detail on our new West project.
Thank you, everyone. It's really an honor to be here today. In a room like this, filled with so many people, it's a joy for me to do so. Of note is that this New West project, which I am developing, of course, for ALT, was done entirely via video conference. I have 14 engineering and consulting groups working on this project. I've met 2 of them in person. We are picking up our permit today to start construction on this fabulous project. And as we all know, these things have taken its toll on our ability to get together, but we have conceived, designed, and had approved this entire project, and I don't know any of the folks who've done it. Which they may think is a good idea, not to having to spend time with me, but in any event, it's been a collaboration of a lot of wonderful, excellent, smart people. And we will have our time to get together very soon as we are breaking ground next week. This is a rendering of the building affectionately known as the ALT New West Affordable Housing Project. It is located on 6th Street in Uptown New Westminster, directly across from the new high school, which is literally on the other side of the road where the red car is parked. As Kent mentioned, ALT's first project was in Colwood, which is a suburb of Victoria. That was also one of my projects. And came to meet ALT and Kent and his executive team through that project. And then they approached us about an opportunity in New Westminster. They felt that with the central location of New West in the heart of the city, that it would be an awesome place for them to do their next project here in the Lower Mainland. I approached the city of New Westminster, hoping, as we always do, to find some property that they could give us essentially for free, which is the model that is used extensively, that our firm Terra Housing and others use. Unfortunately, they didn't have anything, so the challenges increased by the fact we didn't have an easily available site. Here's the rear portion of this building, and I will talk a few minutes about what the plan is here. When I was approached by ALT to launch this project, we went to the city of New Westminster and talked to them about it extensively. And as I said, they didn't have a property for us, but we were talking to them about a project that would be obviously Aboriginal, and it would have this connection to the Swahili community, which is pretty fascinating. These are 2 pretty cool groups of folks, and they have spent lots of time talking to each other about how they are going to interact and the kind of things that they could do. ALT is a seasoned, professional, awesome group of developers, very experienced in this space. Swahili is not. They are the new people to the process of development. So it was very generous, in my opinion, for ALT to reach out to the Swahili people and say, come along with us, ride our coattails, get involved with the project. We'll teach you what we learn as we go along, and hopefully someday you'll build your own projects. You won't need the big brother to teach you how this is done. So that was that was a very cool and powerful liaison between these two excellent groups. The vision was to have a multi-generational building, elders, couples, singles, lots of children, lots of 3-bedroom units. So to really mix the project up. And it is completely designed in that manner. There is no segregation between Swahili and Indigenous. Everybody's going to just randomly live in the building together. Obviously, there's methodologies of how the units are chosen, but this is a very integrated concept. And we took this concept forward and came back in our dealings with BC Housing, who is the primary funder to ALT on this project. Although I'm pleased to announce that CMHC just last week issued a letter of intent to put very significant equity into the project, which we're all very thankful for. So they too are now a major funder in the project. But we started with 57 2- and 3-bedroom units. So this is a project unlike others that I have ever done that has many more family units than is typical. We do have a large amenity room. On the insistence of ALT, we took the maximum amount that was allowed by BC Housing and doubled it. And our answer to BC Housing is, this is an Indigenous project and these people like to hang out a lot together. So our amenity room is larger than would otherwise be the case. And it flows out into a large backyard area, much like John described in his project. We do not have a courtyard, but we do have a huge backyard, and a lot of it will be patio and covered, and there's all kinds of elements back there. But the intention is, by design, the Indigenous people like to gather and they like to meet, and we wanted to be able to extend the space of the amenity room to this huge patio. It will have an arbor on it and tables and all that sort of stuff. So it's a real gathering spot. So this was all part of the conversation when we started the process. As it relates to the affordability of this process, this project was originally accepted and approved by BC Housing under the so-called BC Housing Community Housing Fund. For those of you who aren't aware, BC Housing puts out calls for projects on a regular basis and sets the rules by which those projects will be funded and what elements of rent guidelines and other elements are a part of this specific funding. In the Community Housing Fund, there is a mix of income. So there will be units here that are at core rental rates, which is for people on social assistance. The vast majority of it will be geared to income, so people will pay a set and low percentage of their income, no matter what it is. And then there are a handful, 30% of the units at what's called the low end of the market, which is less expensive than anything else that is new in the community. The combination of these by BC Housing will result in units that average somewhere around 50 to 55% of what a new unit will rent for across the street. Well, not in the high school, although some of the kids have been there so long that they might need to be paying rent, but leaving that aside. So the rents will be very significantly below market rates. And there'll be this interesting mix of people who come into the building, and Luma will manage that process about selecting tenants and figuring out their rental rates as it relates to their income. And that is all part of the BC Housing mandate upon which this project was funded. So, as developer of this project, we faced a number of challenges. Sorry, if I could go back one slide, if any of you can, there we go, the positives. We started out by assembling 6 individual homes on 6th Street, which we tied up for purchase. So as I spoke before, we often use city sites. This one was not that. This was fully private. We assembled 6 properties, and then we went forward with the rezoning application. In the early days of this project, for those of you who are in the planning and policy side of this project exists today because of the policies that are in place in the city of New Westminster and because of the champion mentality that some of the councillors and staff had for this project. These are difficult projects. We had 1,006 people sign a petition against this project. So we are celebrating its start because at the core of the process was the city's OCP designation that there were two vital things that they wanted to see in the city of New Westminster. One of them was Indigenous reconciliation, and the other one was provision of affordable housing. And for those of you who work behind the scenes and you work early and you want to support municipalities towards more of this type of housing, this is where the rubber meets the road. I'm the guy that has come in and put his back towards making this a reality, but it doesn't happen without these fundamental policies being in place in the city of New Westminster, because when we went to change the OCP to allow this project to happen, the council eventually voted unanimously for the project, standing on these two policies. Thank you. I think it's worth clapping too. I think so. They sort of put me out there as a sacrificial lamb to take the shots as we move through the process. But in my mind, I knew the solid ground I was standing on. I knew that I had the backing of senior staff. I knew I had the backing of the council if we did this properly and did it right, which we tried earnestly to do, because they wanted this project to happen. In the process, when we got to the public hearing, it was noted that the finest things that were said about this project were written by people who had sent in hundreds of letters against it. So they read a couple of those and it said, we think affordable housing is an awesome idea. We think that reconciliation should happen. We think embracing the Swahili community is a great idea. Second paragraph, but, comma, don't build it here. Build it somewhere else in New Westminster. I don't support this project on my street. So the kindest things that were said about it were people who thought it was a great idea, just don't build it on my street. And the council decided that no matter where they built it in New Westminster, they were going to get hundreds of such letters. But at the same time, through efforts of the BC Nonprofit Housing Association and others, it was also the most supported project in the history of New Westminster. We smashed the records for support letters, emails that people poured into this project, because as the tension rose, both sides came to the front, some against and some for. One of the key elements of the success was that we picked, in the end, the right site. Uptown New Westminster is a great spot for this type of project because it has services, it has transit, it has the high school, it has the recreational facilities within walking distance. It's an excellent spot, and that fortified the council's resolve to allow this to happen at this particular project. The challenges, as I mentioned, is that we needed a change to the official community plan. And the official community plan in New Westminster was not very old when we brought this project forward, so the residents were understandably confused. They said, hang on, we went through all this process, we made all these things, the designation for the site in question is for townhouses, and now this chap wants to come in and build for the Aboriginal Land Trust this big building. Again, the official community plan had in its preamble this conversation about Indigenous reconciliation and affordable housing. So whilst the people were against the OCP amendment, what trumped it in the end was that the OCP is not a rigid document. The OCP is not the law. The OCP is the community's planning vision for the community with some overriding principles that allows the council to change it as it is required. And many of you here with planning backgrounds have a much better explanation of an OCP, but from the guy in the street, our opportunity stood that the OCP, as I mentioned before, included affordable housing and reconciliation. The local neighborhood groups in New Westminster are a mighty force, and they are well-meaning people, and they're good people, and they are organized in a manner that is, to me, unprecedented. I develop all over the place. I've never seen anything quite like it. But they're organized, and they have their email committees, and they have their substructures, and they came out and opposed us. And I'm not here to say that they were wrong in wanting the OCP to be what it is, and that they expected townhouse, and now we were putting this bigger building. So the city worked with us on a number of ways to mitigate the impact of the building. We were blessed with very deep lots. So initially we had planned the building right in the middle of the property. We pulled the building towards 6th Street, and which made a much bigger backyard and mitigated the shadowing on the across the lane to the neighbors at the back significantly. We cut down the corners of the building, as you saw in the original rendering, to reduce its massing. We put front doors along 6th Street so that it looks, as you walk down the street, like a townhouse project, because each of the units along 6th Street has a colored door that opens like a townhouse door, and you can walk out of that unit right onto the street, and it has its own little patio there, but it has direct access to the street. So as you walk along 6th, you get the feeling that it in fact is a townhouse project. So we worked with the community to try to mitigate some of their concerns, but there's no way to hide the fact that we have a 96-unit, 6-story huge building sitting there. We did what we could to do it, to mitigate some of the elements, and then went forward. I wanted to end by saying that in the end, New West Council gave us unanimous approval for this project. That was a wonderful day for Alt and Kent and his team. And we have taken it through now. We have got our development permit. And as I say, the building permit, or the first element of the building permit, the excavation, comes out today. And we're going to start digging the hole next week. We expect the building to be completed by the end of next year. We're hoping that Christmas 2023 is doable, and it will. In many ways, the hardest part is behind us. Conceiving, planning, getting the approval, getting the finance, getting the legal, getting that organized. We're almost ready to take a break now and start building the building, which in many respects is mechanical, and it will flow as these always do, because it's being built by Van Mark Construction. They're excellent at what they do. We have no doubt that the building as designed will be built on time and on schedule. So that's the process we went through for Kent's building.
Okay, so I'm mindful of time here, so I'm going to actually go fairly quickly through the second project, but certainly one in which we're extremely proud and exciting to be a part of for a number of reasons, but probably foremost is what this project represents or will represent to those living in the downtown east side, particularly those most vulnerable and hard to house. So this project is again through the Aboriginal Land Trust model. It's located at 5292 East Hastings. So we're just going through the lot consolidation process now. And I guess I can share some good news. Like you, we received our development permit after 3 years into the process. We received our development permit on Friday. So the goal for this project is to create or reestablish the First Nations presence in an area which was of extreme historical significance to the local host First Nations. What the project will involve is there will be 112 units of housing, so there will be 59 rental units for Indigenous individuals and families working in the downtown east side or in Vancouver. We'll also be providing 53 units of supportive housing, and this was very key to the vision of the project as far as we were concerned. One of the lots that we were bringing into the fold was being occupied by the Sheldon Hotel, which was operated by Rain City. This building was in such a state of disrepair that the front units to the building were not even being occupied when we entered into these discussions due to mold issues and other types of challenges. So we spoke with Rain City. We invited them into the process. We said, we'd love for you to be part of the new development, and we will help relocate the existing tenants. And those tenants will also be given the first opportunity to move into the new building at obviously the same deep subsidy rate. So those individuals will look forward to welcoming them back once this project is complete. So Rain City was one of our partners. The other partner, which was extremely important to us, was the Vancouver Aboriginal Health Society. This project, we commonly refer to it as the Home and Healing Project. So Vancouver Aboriginal Health, they've been around the downtown east side for many, many years, I believe 35 years. They have all sorts of programs and services, but they seen this project as a great way to actually consolidate all their offices into one space. So let's go on to the next slide. Yes, so the Healing Center, it is going to be quite a large area. It's going to take up the entire second floor of this building, as well as half of the third floor. And there's all sorts of unique Indigenous elements incorporated into the design, such as a permanent sweat lodge on the third floor deck. So like Luma's clinic on Nanaimo Street, Vancouver Aboriginal Health will be offering traditional Western healing as well. And the sweat lodge, of course, is going to be integral to that process. Maybe I'll just, I think we had these slides backwards. And I'll just go back to, well, I won't worry about, it's not going back to the slide. Okay, let's try that. Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. So just, well, if I have time, I'll go back to the funding scheme. But again, why we were so excited about this. We wanted to reestablish that First Nations presence. And so the whole development process started out with what we called a visioning exercise. So we brought together elders, we brought together chiefs and representatives from the local host nations, and we talked about what this project should look like, what types of programs and services should be offered, and how do we ensure that people will recognize this building as truly an Indigenous project and entity. And so one of the first things that we did is once we went through this visioning exercise and established all the goals and philosophies and concepts for the building itself, we contracted with renowned Musqueam weaver Deborah Sparrow to weave 2 blankets for us. And those blankets were then taken by the Urban Arts Architecture team, and they were basically transposed to the facade of the building. And so what Deborah did was explain to us that what these blankets mean to Musqueam and Coast Salish was really traditionally it was a means of honoring someone, and so it was to have these blankets presented to individuals was a means to like I say, to honor them, but also to wrap oneself in a blanket. And so that's what the concept in using these 2 woven blankets were. And so you'll see, or you may have noticed in the initial slide there, that there's that design is, we're very excited about how it's turned out and what it represents. I should also mention that this is an 11-story structure. On the very top floor of the building, we're incorporating a longhouse, which will be used to host community events. So not only for the different commercial tenants in our building, but also for community gatherings. So we're happy to be able to incorporate that as well. I talked a bit about how this was very significant from a historical standpoint. This area was known as Laklaki, that blue line. It's a passageway. At one time, there was a waterway that extended from False Creek through to Burrard Inlet, and it was in this area where the local First Nations would meet to and gather to trade, to perform ceremony and whatnot. So this was definitely a tremendous historical significance to the Coast Salish. We also had to overcome many challenges over this 3-year period, but I will highlight one, and that is that we, because we were having to take down the Sheldon Hotel, which was originally built in 1912, I believe, we of course had to go through the Heritage Commission. And what they were asking us to do, of course, was to retain the facade of the building. And that was, as we all in this room know, one of the mandates of the Heritage Commission is to preserve colonial heritage. But that's not what we wanted to do. What we wanted to do was bring back Indigenous heritage. Okay, so we ended up, we worked with Chief Ian Campbell from the Squamish First Nation, and we basically we were able to, I wouldn't say bypass, because we did meet several times with the Heritage Commission, but at the end of the day, this was a bit of a learning experience for them as well, and we were able to proceed without, and demolish the Sheldon Hotel without having to retain that colonial heritage. Okay, so I talked about that. Okay, and so yeah, I think with that, that brings us or brings my end to a close here, and I want to thank you all for your time.
I could probably just do the Q&A with all the questions I have, ignoring all your questions. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Wow. 2 very impressive, challenging, it seems, projects that are close, getting a building permit for one, and other one is, I think, close to being built as well. And it's really wonderful to see that effort being put in to the dedication that you're putting to make these buildings happen. But it's equally, I want to say, let's say shocking is the word. Not shocking. No one here is shocked at what the challenges that they faced here. But I find it something worth pondering over. Why did you have to face these challenges? Why were these challenges there? How should they be there? Should you really struggle as much as you struggled to build a 6-story building on a transit corridor next to schools? Should you have to do as you did to prioritize Indigenous heritage and culture over colonial heritage and culture? That's just a question I'm throwing around. I'm going to take a question from here because I'm going to keep my promise. But I just want to say thank you for your presentation, and we'll take some questions now. First one on top here is from Anonymous. What social customs, values are shared between Indigenous tenants and the Swahili community that was expressed in the design to nurture social connections? Or will this be addressed operationally? Which one of you would like to take that question?
In the design of the building, when we sat down with Kent and his team and the Swahili team, it became very clear that the operational end of this would lead that charge. As John stated in his presentation about what comes first, the amenities or the programming, these are two enthusiastic groups of people. They can't wait to live together. They've got drumming sessions planned. They have meals planned. I mean, all I had to do was get out of the way. So the building is a building. The tenants will create in that the community that they want. My experience in seeing the communities grow within the alt projects is that they're very dynamic. The Swahili people who have a connection to some of the people at alt, so that's how this came together. They're an enthusiastic bunch and have large families, some of them, and they seem to can't wait to find out what they can do together and just learn from each other. So we didn't build it. We just got out of the way and said, you people, once tenanted, the people will take over.
Yeah, Kent, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I think the importance of family values and similarities there definitely resonated with Luma. The fact that the elders placed in such a high regard, their role within family, within community, in carrying out traditions and customs. And storytelling through song and through dance was all sorts of similarities there as well. So we were very excited to learn more about Swahili culture, and I'm sure, as it's been reported, they're excited to learn more on Indigenous culture.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Wonderful to hear. Thank you. I'll take the next question. I think you were mentioning, Hugh, that the city of New West you were struggling to find the right land, and the land wasn't available. But in the end, you did secure a site. So how did you make that happen? How did you build the case for that to happen?
This created a significant challenge for Luma and the project, Luma and the Aboriginal Land Trust. In most cases, the participation by the cities by giving free land to nonprofit housing societies is a key part of any application to BC Housing. I'm personally involved in 2 projects in the district of North Vancouver, wherein 60-year leases are made available to nonprofit housing societies for $1 a year. And you have a speaker coming up later from the city of North Vancouver. I too am involved in a project there with a similar arrangement between the city and the nonprofit societies. So I believe the answer to the question is simply that the desire for the Aboriginal Land Trust to be located in the central part of New Westminster on a site that made sense with no other option available in the form of free land. We simply put that forward to BC Housing as a development group and presented it in a manner that explained who Alt was, who the Swahili Nation was, and what that was to look like. And we really left it to their discretion about whether they would fund this project, given that we paid essentially market value for the property, and they chose to support it. And we are, the greater we are very thankful for that. BC Housing is a wonderful partner in all of these projects at Terra Housing and at Luma Development. We build a great deal of housing with BC Housing's funding. And this was a unique one in that the land was purchased, but in their analysis of it, it was worthy of funding. And you do nothing more in these funding applications and put your best case forward. Ours was a 400-page document.
Wow.
That we put in, that was carefully scrutinized, and the answer came back that we will support it. So we didn't, it's that simple. We did our best, we put it forward, and BC Housing made the ultimate decision. And then since then, CMHC has also decided they want to be a part of it and have put in over $9 million in equity into the deal.
Yeah, quick follow-up question. So, I mean, I think you spoke a lot about the process from when you started the application going through the OSP rezoning, but what you're describing here is really like before that even starts. That this is before there is a site for this project. I'm curious how much time happens before a project is presented to a public?
Well, in the case of this project, we, in order to put a significant and viable application into BC Housing, our joint groups spent in excess of $500,000 of our own money to make it a reality. We had to tie up the properties, we had to engage the architect, we had to do a number of these elements that we thought would show the project in its best light as we moved it towards BC Housing. Sometimes you have a dream that you put into BC Housing, and they fund those frequently. In the case of us, with our unique situation, knowing the cost of the land, et cetera, was a significant deviation from their norm, the decision was made to push the project much further along than would normally be the case. And so our application had a lot more meat on the bones, if you will, than might otherwise have been the case. And the team jointly decided to move that forward to put the best case forward.
Very interesting. I'm going to take a final question. Final question. Madam's telling me final question. I will take the second one. It was on top for a while, and they have people votes. What social customs, values are shared between Indigenous tenants and the Swahili community that were expressed in the design to nurture social connections? Oh, I already asked that question. Well, it sounded familiar, didn't it? Okay, so I'm going to go back to the first one. Yeah. Has Luma or a partner documented process and rationale for establishing the land trust? People are interested to learn in the challenges, barriers, and benefits in the process for developing our own trust. I think this is a model that is gaining popularity across Canada, particularly in BC. So let's go with the first piece of that question, and then carry on later. Kent, is that something you want to take on?
Sure. Well, yes, we do have a documented process, and I think this was rationale for establishing the land trust, as I noted earlier on, was to enable or give LUMA more control over its assets. So we, again, a lot of our projects are built with 60-year leases, and land is owned by Provincial Rental Housing Corporation, and those types of scenarios. Here we're actually in a position to purchase the land, and this will allow LUMA to become much more self-sustainable, and also to give us more leverage as we continue and expand our portfolio.
Yeah. I cannot thank you both enough for joining us here today. I think I speak for everyone here when I say that that was really inspiring, really wonderful, and we learned a lot. And I think it shines a real light on the barriers that come to building affordable housing, building housing for Indigenous people, building socially connected housing that we are seeing. You're mentioning $500,000 just for a project to be. That's a barrier, and thinking about why that is a question. Having to go through local residents and who are opposing a 6-story building, affordable housing for Indigenous people. If that's the process, if that's the effort it takes to build 6 stories, that's a real challenge. And then what you mentioned with the Heritage, Commission, I think all of that shines a light on some of the challenges that I know many people here and many people online are facing in advancing their projects. And it's important to learn from these things so that when we are doing these projects individually and part of our work, we think of how we can tackle these things together because they're affecting everyone. So please give a big round of applause for Kent and Hugh. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time.